When Captain Will Adams saw the alien cityscape through the forward camera feeds, his throat clenched. What dark secrets lurked in that strange and silent technological forest? The human explorer ships had ventured further into the uncharted wilds of space than ever before following a cryptic signal. At first, the barren system had seemed empty, lifeless, unremarkable. But then the squadron's sensors discovered the impossible, a sprawling metroplex on a remote world, constructed of exotic alloys and pulsing with unknown energies. It was beyond anything humanity had achieved. As Adams leaned forward to squint at the flickering displays, he grasped the awful truth. Stumbling upon this hyper-advanced alien civilization would change the human species forever, for better or worse. There would be no going back. Awestruck and apprehensive, Adams ordered the small fleet to approach the planet cautiously. They had to establish peaceful contact, open a dialogue. Access to even a fraction of the aliens' knowledge and technology could solve all of humanity's problems. Disease, war, poverty, scarcity, it could all be eradicated if they played their cards right. The entire future of the human race hinged on this moment. Adams hailed the silent planet on all frequencies, voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope as he spoke. "This is Captain Will Adams of the Terran Galactic Survey. We come in peace, on behalf of all humanity, seeking friendship between our peoples." He never finished his greeting. A harsh alien voice boomed over the comm channel, deep and grating, translated into blunt English by the ship's AI matrices. "You have violated the territory of the Qatarian Imperial. Your presence is a transgression. Depart now, or be destroyed. This is your only warning." A flotilla of sleek alien craft arose from the city below like hornets from a kicked nest, bristling with weapons, shields flaring. Scanners showed the Tarian vessels were horrifically advanced, easily outclassing the human ships. There would be no fighting them. "Wait," Adams yelled. "Please, we mean no offense. We're peaceful explorers. Let us talk. We have so much to learn from each other." The response was a salvo of blinding energy beams that raked across the Terran fleet, boiling away armor and frying systems. Klaxons shrieked as the battered human ships lurched into evasive maneuvers, leaking air and debris. People would die if they didn't escape. Adams had no choice but to order a limping retreat, watching the treasure of alien knowledge recede into the void. Humanity needed that technology. Failure here doomed the entire species to continued suffering and hardship. He would find a way back, a way to break through to the Qatarians. The fate of all humans depended on it, even if it took his last breath. As the blasted ships fled deeper into the uncaring black of space, he swore to return, no matter what it took. As the Tarian ships closed in, their weapons charged and ready to vaporize the small human vessel. A sudden flash of energy enveloped Adams' shuttle. He braced for impact, but instead of the searing heat of Tarian weaponry, he felt a gentle tug as the shuttle was caught in a tractor beam. The Qatarian ships hesitated, their attack halted as the beam pulled the human craft towards the largest ship in their fleet. The shuttle shuddered as it was drawn into the cavernous hangar bay of the Qatarian flagship. Adams and his team exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what awaited them. As the shuttle touched down, they were greeted by a phalanx of heavily armed Qatarian soldiers, their weapons trained on the human intruders. At the head of the group stood Janus, his expression a mix of anger and curiosity. Adams stepped out of the shuttle, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We come in peace, Janus. We only wish to talk." Janus snorted, his eyes narrowing. "You were warned, human. Your presence here is a violation of our laws. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't have you and your crew executed on the spot." Adams took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "We seek to learn from you to establish a relationship between our peoples. There is so much we could offer each other, knowledge, resources, cooperation. Surely there must be a way for us to coexist peacefully." Janus laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You know nothing of our ways, human. The Qatarians have survived for millennia by keeping to ourselves, trusting no one. We have no need for your cooperation." As the tense conversation grew more heated, a sudden alarm blared throughout the ship. A Katarian officer rushed to Janice's side, speaking urgently in their native tongue. Janice's expression shifted from anger to concern as he listened to the report. "An unknown alien fleet has entered our system," he said, turning to Adams. "They are attacking our homeworld. Our defenses are struggling to hold them back." Adams saw the conflict in Janice's eyes, the desire to protect his people warring with his ingrained distrust of outsiders. In that moment, he knew he had to act. "Let us help you," Adams said, his voice firm. "Our ships are damaged, but we still have weapons and shields. We can fight alongside you, defend your world from these invaders." Janus hesitated, his fingers tightening around his weapon. The seconds stretched out, the alarm still blaring in the background. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, human. We will fight together for now. But if you betray us, if you use this as an opportunity to strike against us, I will personally ensure that you and your entire species pay the price." Adams nodded, his heart racing. "Understood, we won't let you down." As Adams and his team rushed back to their shuttle, preparing to coordinate with the human fleet, Janus watched them go. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, the fear for his people's safety, the anger at the humans' intrusion, and a small, grudging spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, these strange creatures might be the key to his civilization's survival. Adams gripped the armrests of his command chair as the bridge shook, sparks flying from overloaded consoles. On the view screen, sleek Zorgon ships tore through the combined human and Katarian fleet with horrifying ease, their weapons sliced through shields like a hot knife through butter, leaving twisted wreckage in their wake. "Sir, our shields are down to 20%, Lieutenant Chen yelled over the chaos. "We can't take much more of this." Adams gritted his teeth, analyzing the tactical display. The Zorgons moved with ruthless precision, their formations perfectly coordinated. But there, a pattern in their attacks, a slight vulnerability when they fired their main cannons. "Janus, are you seeing this?" Adams hailed the Tarian flagship. "I think I know how we can hurt them." Janus's scaled face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Speak quickly, human. My people are dying." Adams outlined his plan. The humans would draw the Zorgons' fire, pulling them out of formation. The Katarians, with their superior maneuverability, would then flank the enemy and target their exposed weak points. Janus narrowed his eyes, considering. "It's risky, but it may be our only chance. We will follow your lead, Adams." The two fleets moved as one, the humans charging forward recklessly, absorbing the brunt of the Zorgon assault. Katarian ships darted around the edges, waiting for their moment. Then, as the Zorgons turned to pursue the humans, the Katarians struck. Their precision weapons found the chinks in the enemy's armor, and Zorgon ships began to crumple and explode. For a moment it seemed like victory was at hand. But then the sensors lit up with new contacts, a second Zorgon fleet, twice the size of the first, dropping out of warp on the edge of the battlefield. "Fall back," Adams ordered, his heart sinking. "Regroup at the coordinates I'm sending now." The battered human and Katarian ships limped away from the advancing Zorgons, barely staying ahead of their pursuers. They gathered in a dense asteroid field, using the floating rocks to mask their signatures. On a secure channel, Adams met with Janus, the Tarian's holographic form flickering in the dim light of the briefing room. "The Zorgons," Janus said heavily. "We have faced them before. They are relentless, merciless. They seek to enslave all other races, to bend the galaxy to their will." Adams leaned forward, his face lined with exhaustion and grim resolve. "How have you beaten them in the past?" Janus laughed bitterly. "Barely, and never without great cost. They are technologically superior, and their numbers seem endless." Adams thought for a moment, an idea forming. "What about infiltration? A small team using your advanced stealth tech might be able to slip aboard their command ship undetected. If we can disable their leadership, it could cripple their fleet." Janus blinked, surprised. "It's a bold plan, human, dangerous, but it might work." He nodded slowly. "I will gather my best warriors. We will need your skills as well, Adams. Adams met Janus's gaze, seeing the grudging respect in the alien's eyes. I'm with you, let's end this together. As the unlikely allies began their preparations, a fragile bond formed between them. The shared determination to protect their people, to forge a future free from the Zorgon threat. The battle ahead would test them to their limits, but united, they just might stand a chance. The cloaked Katarian shuttle drifted silently through the void, its reflective hull blending seamlessly with the starlit backdrop. On board, Adams, Janus, and their hand-picked team checked their weapons and steeled themselves for the infiltration ahead. As the shuttle slipped undetected into the Zorgon flagship's hangar bay, the strike force moved out, Katarian active camouflage rendering them virtually invisible. They crept through the cavernous chamber, dodging patrols and security scanners. Deeper in the bowels of the massive ship, the team emerged into a dimly lit corridor, their adaptive camo shifting to match the metallic bulkheads. Adams signaled a halt as a group of Zorgon soldiers marched past, their harsh alien language echoing off the walls. Once the patrol moved on, the infiltrators pushed forward, neutralizing isolated sentries with quick, silent efficiency. Adams and Janus worked in tandem, their movements fluid and coordinated as they cleared each section. The team approached the command deck, but as they rounded a corner, a squad of Zorgons opened fire. Energy bolts scorched the air as the strike force dove for cover, returning fire with disciplined precision. Janus ducked behind a bulkhead, popping out to down a Zorgon trooper with a well-placed shot. Adams, flank left, we'll pin them down. Adams nodded, motioning for his soldiers to move. They advanced, leapfrogging from cover to cover as the Zorgons fell back. In the heart of the command center, a dozen Zorgons worked frantically at their stations, a large holomap displaying the raging battle outside. One Zorgon, a tall, spindly creature with mottled green skin, turned to another with a worried look. The Katarians fight fiercely, but it's the humans that concern me. Their tactics are unpredictable. The second Zorgon, broader and covered in red scales, hissed dismissively. They are primitives recently emerged from their homeworld. What threat could they pose? The green Zorgon shook his head. You underestimate them. I've seen the reports. They adapt quickly and their technology advances at an alarming rate. If we do not crush them now, they could become a formidable enemy. Just then, the command center doors exploded inward, Adams and Janus charging through the smoke with their teams. The Zorgons scrambled for their weapons, but the strike force was faster. Plasma bolts and laser pulses crisscrossed the room as the two sides clashed. In the chaos, Adams found himself grappling with the red-scaled Zorgon. Their weapons knocked aside, they traded blows. Adams' augmented strength pitted against the alien's wiry musculature. With a final, desperate effort, Adams threw the Zorgon off balance and slammed him into a console, the creature slumping unconscious to the deck. As the fight wound down, Adams and Janus regrouped, surveying the newly won command center. But as they accessed the Zorgon databanks, a disturbing revelation awaited them. Janus, look at this, Adams called, gesturing to a holo display. The Zorgons, they're not a single species. They're a patchwork of conquered races, enslaved by something called the Overlords. Janus studied the data, his brow furrowed. An empire built on subjugation. How many worlds have they consumed? Adams shook his head grimly. Too many. We can't let this stand. We have to find a way to free these people. Janus held up a clawed hand. Our priority must be stopping the invasion of my homeworld. We can deal with the overlords later. Before they could debate further, a klaxon blared, and a new wave of Zorgon reinforcements flooded into the command center. The strike team opened fire, but they were badly outnumbered. A plasma bolt caught Adams in the shoulder, spinning him around. Janus dragged him to cover as the humans and Katarians fell back, desperately trying to hold the line. We can't hold them, Janus snarled, downing two Zorgons with precise shots. We have to fall back and regroup. Adams gritted his teeth against the pain, nodding. Agreed, we'll find another way. The team fought their way back to their entry point. their numbers dwindling with each passing minute. By the time they reached their shuttle, only a handful remained. As the battered infiltrators saw to their wounds, Adams turned to Janus. "We need a new plan. Hitting the command center again would be suicide." Janus considered for a moment, then met Adams's gaze. "What if we split up? A smaller team might be able to reach the ship's power core. If we can disable it, their weapons and shields will go down." Adams frowned. "It's risky. We'd be spreading ourselves thin." "It's our best chance," Janus insisted. "I'll take a team to the command center, create a diversion. You hit the power core." Adams hesitated, then clasped Janus's forearm. "All right, but be careful. I'm starting to like having you around." Janus bared his fangs in a fierce grin. "I'll try not to die for your sake." The two leaders split their forces, each leading a handful of soldiers towards their respective targets. As Adams and his team crept through the bowels of the ship, the resistance intensified. It seemed the Zorgons had finally realized the humans' true intentions. Alarms howled as Adams and his soldiers fought their way deeper into the ship, trading fire with the increasingly desperate Zorgon defenders. The air grew hot and thick, the power core's thrumming vibrations shaking the deck plates. Adams ducked as a plasma bolt sizzled past his head, the heat singeing his hair. He returned fire, dropping the Zorgon soldier with a precise burst. His team pushed forward, but their advance was met with a hail of energy bolts from a heavily fortified checkpoint. Two humans went down, their armor smoking. Adams dragged them to cover, his mind racing. They were so close to the power core, but the Zorgons were dug in deep. It would take a miracle to break through. Just as despair began to set in, Adams' comm crackled to life. "Adams, it's Janus. We've reached the command center, but we're pinned down. Please tell me you have some good news." Adams laughed bitterly, flinching as an energy bolt exploded nearby. "I wish I did. We're at the power core, but the Zorgons have it locked down tight. I don't know if we can break through." There was a pause. Then Janus's voice returned, strained but determined. "You must. The fate of both our species depends on it. We'll buy you as much time as we can. Now go, before it's too late." The comm went silent, and Adams closed his eyes for a brief moment, gathering his resolve. Then he turned to his remaining soldiers, their faces grim but unyielding. "You heard the man. Let's finish this." With a final desperate charge, Adams and his team surged forward into the teeth of the Zorgon defenses, energy weapons blazing. They would reach the power core or die trying. The future of humanity and the Katarians hung in the balance. Adams and his ragtag squad battled through the Zorgon ship, blasting enemy troops with searing plasma bolts. Alarms shrieked and bulkheads shook from the ferocious gunfight. As they pushed doggedly toward the power core, a strange sight brought them skidding to a halt. Huddled in an alcove, a group of haggard aliens in tattered uniforms cowered, flinching at the sounds of combat. Their implants and tools marked them as engineers. Adams lowered his rifle and approached slowly, hands raised. "Don't shoot!" one alien pleaded in halting galactic common. "We're prisoners, slaves. I am Zorax." Adams' eyes widened. Zorax's species were legendary for their technical brilliance. An idea sparked. He knelt, meeting Zorax's eye. "We're here to destroy this ship and free everyone under the Zorgon yoke. Help us get to the power core, and I swear we'll liberate your people." Zorax studied Adams's earnest face for a long moment, then nodded grimly. "We will help. Follow me." The engineers scurried down a maintenance shaft, Adams' team close behind. They slipped past security drones and blast doors with ease, the engineers' knowledge of the ship proving invaluable. In the command center, a very different scene unfolded. Janus and his Katarian warriors burst onto the bridge, weapons blazing. They cut down Zorgon officers and technicians with ruthless efficiency, but froze when a booming voice commanded, "Enough!" The smoke cleared, revealing a towering figure. Cybernetic implants bristled from mottled green flesh, and malevolent intelligence glinted in compound eyes. The Zorgon Overlord. Tarians, humans, your tenacity has earned my respect, the Overlord rumbled. Surrender now, swear fealty, and your worlds will be spared the Zorgon fist. Janus snarled, lunging at the warlord. They clashed in a whirlwind of slashing claws and sizzling energy blades, the duel vicious and lightning fast. Sabotage the command systems, Janus roared to his team as he grappled with the Overlord. Shut this monstrosity down. In the bowels of the ship, Adams and Zorax reached the pulsing heart of the power core. Working frantically, they planted explosive charges on key conduits and junctions. Charges set, Zorax reported, voice tight, ready to detonate. But as Adams reached for the trigger, a hail of plasma fire sent them diving for cover. Zorgon troops poured into the chamber trying to stop them. Hold them off, Adams shouted to his team, blasting away at the attackers. Zorax crouched behind a coolant tank, fingers flying over the detonator. A plasma bolt missed his head by inches, slagging the wall behind him. Adams and his soldiers fought like demons, striving to buy Zorax the seconds he needed. But the Zorgons kept coming, an endless tide of fanatical warriors. Ammunition ran low, soldiers fell, scorched and bleeding. The end seemed inevitable. At the critical moment, Zorax looked up from the detonator, face set with purpose. He met Adams's desperate gaze and pressed the final key. A soundless flash, a rippling wave of force. The world dissolved in blinding white as the power core ruptured, hurling Adams to the deck. Then darkness and utter silence, the flagship's systems crashing like dominoes. Gravity, lights, engines, all failed as the ship became a lifeless husk, drifting in the void. In the sudden quiet, Adams pulled himself painfully to his feet, calling out to his team. Damage reports flooded in, a cacophony of voices in the darkness. The power core was destroyed, the Zorgon flagship neutralized, but the fight was far from over. On the bridge, Janus still battled the Overlord in the faint emergency lighting. Two titans locked in mortal combat. The war raged on beyond the crippled ship. This was only the beginning. In the shattered ruins of the Zorgon flagship's power core, Adams and Zorax rallied their ragtag band of freed prisoners. The once enslaved aliens, eyes alight with newfound hope, snatched up fallen Zorgon weapons and formed a crude but determined militia under the humans' guidance. Zorax, his skills invaluable, quickly organized teams to secure vital systems and gather intelligence. Adams activated his comm, shouting over the din of distant battle. Janus, the power core is down, moving to the command center now. Janus's voice crackled back, strained and breathless. Understood, the Overlord is here, hurry. Adams signaled his squad and Zorax's resistance fighters. They moved out, racing through the darkened corridors of the dying ship. Emergency lights flickered feebly, casting eerie shadows. The deck lurched and groaned beneath their feet. But the Zorgons were far from defeated. Disoriented but loyal, they rallied to defend their master. Firefights erupted in the passageways as Adams' force clashed with pockets of resistance. Energy weapons lit the gloom with strobing flashes, the air thick with ozone and smoke. At a junction, a Zorgon ambush pinned them down. Adams and Zorax took cover together, trading shots with the dug-in defenders. We're running out of time, Adams shouted over the laser fire. Janus needs us. Zorax popped up to vaporize a Zorgon trooper with a well-placed shot. I have an idea. If we reroute power from the auxiliary conduits, we could overload their position. Adams nodded grimly, laying down suppressing fire. Do it! Zorax worked frantically, his fingers flying over a sparking control panel. With a final command, the conduits ruptured in a cascade of blinding energy. The Zorgons vanished in the inferno, their screams swallowed by the roar of plasma. The way clear, Adams led the charge onward. As they neared the command deck, the sounds of vicious combat grew louder. They burst through the final hatch to a scene of utter chaos. Janus and the Overlord dueled in the center of the shattered bridge. The Qatarians' blades locked against the cyborg's crackling energy staff. Around them, Janus's battered team fought desperately against the Overlord's elite guard. Adams took in the scene in a heartbeat, then bellowed a battle cry, "For Earth, for Kataris!" He and his force plunged into the melee, lasers and plasma bolts filling the air. Back to back with Janus, Adams grappled with the Overlord's guards, his rifle blazing. Zorax and the Resistance fighters fanned out, turning the tide with sheer numbers and fury. In the heart of the chaos, Janus and the Overlord battled with blinding speed and brutal strength. The Katarian fought with desperate skill, but the Overlord's cybernetic enhancements gave it a terrifying edge. It hammered through Janus's guard, sending him crashing to the deck. The Overlord loomed above him, raising its staff for the killing blow. With a roar of defiance, Adams leapt between them, blocking the crackling staff with his rifle. The weapon shattered, but it bought Janus a precious second to regain his feet. Together, the human and Katarian surged forward in a final, desperate attack. Under their combined assault, the Overlord staggered. Adams pressed the advantage, battering the cyborg's defenses, forcing it back. With a mighty cry, Janus leapt forward and buried his blades in the Overlord's chest. The Zorgon leader convulsed, sparks and ichor fountaining from its ruined body. It toppled, clanging to the deck in a heap of shattered metal and bleeding flesh. Cheers erupted from the Resistance fighters as the last Zorgon guards fell. In the skies beyond the viewports, the leaderless Zorgon fleet broke apart, some ships fleeing, others falling to the vengeful guns of the human and Katarian vessels. On the flagship's wrecked bridge, Adams and Janus stood shoulder to shoulder, breathing hard. Zorax approached, his face a mix of triumph and grim determination. "This is a great victory," the alien engineer said, "but the fight is just beginning. The Zorgon still hold many worlds in their grip. We must free them all." Adams and Janus exchanged a glance, a silent moment of understanding passing between them. Then Adams turned to Zorax, clasping his shoulder. "We're with you," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "We'll fight on until every enslaved species is free. This is only the first step." As the Resistance fighters and Allied fleets regrouped, a new chapter in the galaxy's history was beginning. A war of liberation, a crusade against tyranny, with Adams, Janus, and Zorax at its forefront. The battle against the Zorgon overlords was far from over. But now, for the first time, there was hope. The seeds of an alliance had been sown, one that would shake the very foundations of the Zorgon Empire. In the aftermath of the Zorgon flagship's destruction, Adams, Janus, and Zorax surveyed the wreckage strewn across the battlefield. The once mighty Zorgon fleet lay in ruins, its ships shattered and adrift. The Katarian and human vessels, battered but victorious, began the arduous process of search and rescue, plucking survivors from the debris. On the flagship's ruined bridge, Adams and Janus pored over the data they'd extracted from the Zorgon systems. Zorax, his technical expertise invaluable, worked to decrypt the heavily protected files. "I'm in," Zorax announced, his eyes widening as he scanned the information flooding the screens. "This is incredible. The Overlord's empire spans dozens of systems, with hundreds of worlds under their control." Adams leaned in, his brow furrowed. How have they maintained their grip for so long? Janus pointed to a schematic of a Zorgon device. This, a neural suppressor. Implanted in every conquered species, it keeps them docile, obedient, resistant to the Overlord's will. Zorax nodded grimly. "My people have been under its influence for generations. It's all we've known." Adams slammed his fist on the console. "Not anymore. We'll free every last one of them." In the days that followed, representatives from the Katarian, human, and liberated alien civilizations gathered on a neutral world. There they laid the groundwork for a new alliance, one dedicated to ending the Overlord's tyrannical reign. "We stand together," Adams declared, his voice ringing through the assembly hall, "united in our commitment to freedom and justice. No longer will we be divided, exploited, enslaved. From this day forward, we are the Galactic Alliance." Cheers erupted from the gathered delegates, a cacophony of languages and species united in common purpose. As the alliance grew, its members working tirelessly to rebuild and strengthen their worlds, Disturbing reports began to filter in from the frontier. Planets still under Zorgon control, their populations crying out for aid. In the war room of the Alliance headquarters, Adams, Janus, and Zorax studied a holographic map of the galaxy, red markers indicating the besieged worlds. "We have to help them," Adams insisted, his jaw set with determination. "We can't turn our backs on their suffering." Janus nodded, his eyes hard. "Agreed. But we must be cautious. The overlords will not relinquish their power easily." Zorax stepped forward, a fire in his gaze. "I will lead the first mission. My people have waited too long for this chance." And so the Galactic Alliance launched a series of daring strikes against the Zorgon strongholds. Adams, Janus, and Zorax led their forces into the heart of enemy territory, their ships striking hard and fast. They liberated slave camps, destroyed suppressor factories, and rallied the oppressed to rise up against their masters. With each victory, more and more worlds flocked to the Alliance banner. Former slaves took up arms alongside their liberators, their fury and hunger for vengeance a potent weapon against the overlords. But even as the tide turned in their favor, Adams and his allies knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. The overlords, sensing the growing threat to their power, began to marshal their forces for a massive counterattack. In the Alliance Command Center, grim-faced leaders from a dozen species gathered around the central holotable. "Our spies report that the overlords are massing their fleets in the Zorgon home system," Janus said, his voice tight. "They're preparing for a final strike against us." Adams leaned forward, his eyes blazing with resolve. "Then we take the fight to them. We end this once and for all." The room fell silent, the weight of the moment settling over them all. This would be the battle that decided the fate of the galaxy, the culmination of all they had fought and sacrificed for. As one, the leaders of the Galactic Alliance turned to face the star-strewn void beyond the viewport, their gazes fixed on the distant spark of the Zorgon system. The final confrontation with the overlords loomed on the horizon, and they would meet it head-on, united and unyielding. As the final preparations for the decisive battle against the Zorgon overlords were underway, Adams and Zorax slipped away from the bustling command center. They boarded a sleek, unmarked shuttle, their faces set with grim determination. The small craft streaked through the void, its advanced stealth systems rendering it virtually invisible to enemy sensors. Their destination, a heavily fortified Zorgon research facility hidden deep within a remote asteroid field. "Adams, we're approaching the facility," Zorax said, his eyes scanning the shuttle's displays. "Sensors show multiple layers of security, force fields, automated defense turrets, and a large contingent of Zorgon guards." Adams nodded, checking his weapon. "We'll have to move fast and quiet. Our priority is the data core. If we can extract their research files, it could give us a crucial advantage." The shuttle docked with the facility's outer airlock, and the two infiltrators slipped inside. They crept through dimly lit corridors, the sterile white walls broken by pulsing conduits and humming machinery. As they approached the central research hub, a chilling sight brought them to a halt. Through a large observation window, they saw rows of containment pods, each housing a different alien species. Many of the creatures were horribly mutilated, their bodies augmented with crude cybernetics. "My gods," Zorax breathed, his face pale. "They're experimenting on them, trying to fuse their own technology with living tissue." Adam's jaw clenched, anger burning in his eyes. "We have to free them." They moved to the containment controls, working frantically to override the security locks. As the pods hissed open, the captives stumbled out, many barely able to stand. One alien, a tall, slender being with luminous eyes, stepped forward. "I'm Vela," he said, his voice resonating in their minds. "My people were taken by the Zorgons long ago. We have waited generations for a chance at freedom." Adams met Vela's gaze, recognizing the strength and wisdom there. "Join us," he said. "Help us fight the overlords, and we'll make sure your people are never enslaved again." Vela nodded solemnly. "I accept your offer, Adams of Earth. My abilities are yours to command. But as they set to work sabotaging the facility's defenses and freeing the remaining captives, alarms began to blare. Zorgon guards poured into the chamber, weapons blazing. Adams and Zorax took cover, returning fire. But they were badly outnumbered and the Zorgons pressed their attack. Suddenly, Vela stepped forward, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. The Zorgon guards froze, their expressions going slack. Then, to Adam's shock, they turned on each other, firing wildly. "Go!" Vela shouted, his face strained with effort. "I can't control them for long." Adam, Zorax, and the freed captives raced for the shuttle, dodging energy bolts and falling debris. They piled inside, Zorax scrambling to the controls. As the shuttle blasted away from the facility, a searing lance of plasma struck its flank. Valar cried out in pain, collapsing to the deck. A jagged wound marred his chest, oozing silvery blood. Adams knelt beside him, trying to stem the flow. "Hold on, Valar, we'll get you help, I promise." Just then, the comm system crackled to life. "Adams!" Jaina's voice was strained, almost panicked. "The Zorgons have launched an all-out assault on our main forward operating base. We're holding them off, but we need reinforcements now." Adams looked to Zorax, torn. They had to get Valar and the other rescued captives to safety, but if that base fell, it could cripple the Alliance's war effort. Zorax met his gaze, understanding in his eyes. "I'll get them to the rendezvous point, Adams. You take a team and go help Janus. We'll join you as soon as we can." Adams clasped Zorax's arm, nodding grimly. He turned to the shuttle's small complement of soldiers. "You heard the man. We're dropping into the hottest part of this fight. The fate of the Alliance rests on us holding that base. Let's move." As the shuttle hurtled through the stars, Adams stared out at the looming spectre of the besieged outpost, already ablaze with the fires of battle. He checked his rifle, his heart pounding in his ears. This was it, the moment of truth. If they failed here, the Zorgons would crush the Alliance's last hope of resistance. Adams gritted his teeth, steeling himself for the desperate fight ahead. Adams's shuttle hurtled out of warp, the besieged Alliance outpost looming before him. Zorgon ships swarmed like angry hornets, hammering the outpost's shields with relentless fire. Janus's voice crackled over the comm, strained and desperate. "Adams, thank the gods, we can't hold them much longer." Adams gritted his teeth, yanking the shuttle into a sharp dive. "I'm coming in hot. Where do you need me?" "The main landing bay. We've set up a choke point, but the Zorgons are pushing hard. Hurry!" The shuttle screeched into the hangar, Adams leaping out before the ramp fully lowered. He charged into the fray, blaster rifle spitting red death. Beside him, Janus rallied the battered defenders, his voice booming over the chaos. "Hold the line, we will not fall this day." Adams and Janus fought shoulder to shoulder, weaving a deadly dance through the Zorgon ranks. Plasma bolts sizzled past, the air thick with ozone and charred flesh. With their combined skills, the Alliance forces held their ground, buying precious time. But then a shadow fell across the battlefield, a massive Zorgon warship descending like a predatory bird. Its weapons glowed ominously, locking onto the outpost. Janus paled, his eyes hardening with grim resolve. He turned to Adams, gripping his arm. "That ship will tear us apart. I'm going to take it out." Adams shook his head violently. "No, there has to be another way." Janus smiled sadly. "There isn't. Not this time." He clasped Adams's shoulder, his voice fierce with conviction. "You must lead them, Adams. Forge a future free from Zorgon tyranny. Promise me." Tears stung Adam's eyes, but he nodded. "I promise." Janus sprinted for a nearby fighter, leaping into the cockpit. The small craft roared to life, streaking towards the looming warship. Zorgon fire lanced after him, but he jinked and wove, evading the deadly beams. Adams watched, his heart in his throat as Janus's fighter plunged directly into the warship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Zorgon vessel exploded in a blinding flash, the shockwave slamming into the outpost like a fist. Adams staggered, grief and rage warring in his chest. Janus was gone, but his sacrifice would not be in vain. Adams rallied the Alliance troops, his voice raw with emotion. "For Janus, for freedom, charge!" They surged forward, a tide of righteous fury crashing against the Zorgon lines. Blaster fire and grenades ripped through the enemy ranks, the ground slick with blood and debris. But even with their newfound resolve, the Alliance forces were badly outnumbered. Adams ducked behind a shattered barricade, his rifle clicking empty. He reached for another power cell, but his hand closed on air. He was out. All around him, his soldiers fell, cut down by the relentless Zorgon advance. Just as despair threatened to engulf him, a familiar voice crackled over the comm. "Adams, hold on, we're coming." "Zorax," Adams' head snapped up, hope surging in his chest. A ragged cheer went up from the Alliance troops as a fleet of ships dropped out of warp, weapons blazing. Zorax had returned, and he'd brought reinforcements, ships crewed by the freed alien species, united against their former oppressors. The tide turned in a heartbeat. The Zorgons, caught between the vengeful Alliance forces and the fresh reinforcements, broke and ran. Plasma fire chased them as they fled, ships exploding into clouds of molten shrapnel. Adams sagged against the barricade, exhaustion and grief crashing over him. They had won the day, but at a terrible cost. In the battle's aftermath, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Zorgon Empire was fracturing, its subject species rising up in open rebellion. The overlords, their power crumbling, retreated to their core worlds. The Galactic Alliance pressed its advantage, liberating world after world. Adams found himself thrust into a leadership role, guiding the fledgling alliance through the challenges of forging a new galactic order. There was so much work to be done, so many scars to heal. But as Adams looked out over the cheering crowds of a newly freed planet, he felt a flicker of hope. Janus's dream, the dream of a galaxy united in peace and freedom, was finally within reach, and Adams would spend the rest of his life making it a reality. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.